What's the plan for bringing back Maxwell Hairston? And are the Bills playing James Cook and Joey Bosa too much? We're going to break that down and a whole lot more today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you control our conversation. And some great submissions were sent in, some great questions, talking points. We'll get into the pass rush and third down defense, Joey Bosa's role, James Cook's role. But I want to start with this one from Ruckus, who says, how do you expect the Bills to bring back Maxwell Hairston? Once healthy, will he be an immediate starter or worked in slowly? It's a good question. I'm fascinated to find this out myself. Obviously, you're waiting for not only Hairston to be physically ready to play, right, healed, but mentally ready, can be able to step in and execute the defense. He's missed a lot of reps, right? Missed all that time in camp and preseason, and we're weeks into this regular season, and the guy hasn't practiced in a long time. So you got to make sure he's ready to go. But the exciting part is that he represents the ceiling, right? He has the potential to be a better player than what Trey White is giving you right now. And you should be excited to see what that looks like on your defense. So, yeah, get healed up, and I'm sure he's got to be close, right? And then get ready. Get ready, and then it's about finding the right opportunity to get him on the field. And I can definitely see this ultimately being a platoon situation where the Bills will play Trey White some, they'll play Maxwell Hairston some, and situations could dictate which one you have on the field. But obviously, the hope and the goal should be to ramp up Hairston to the point where that's your 100% of the snaps player across from Christian Benford. I will say this on Trey White. I don't think he's playing that bad. He's played 2 games, right? Started 2 games. He missed the Ravens game. But in 2 games, he's been thrown at 7 times. He's given up 5 catches for 27 yards. That's it. And he's been mostly a very positive player defending the run. Obviously, he let Tua break contain on that one corner blitz, but his tackling and run defense has been, really outstanding outside of that. And again, 2 games, thrown at 7 times, gave up 5 catches for 27 yards. It's not like he's getting abused. There's some frustrating completions because they're third downs and, he's one-on-one with Jalen Waddle and you want them to get off the field, but Trey White can't run with Jalen Waddle. And if your pass rush isn't getting there, well, what do you expect's going to happen? So I think this will be a platoon situation, but eventually give way to Harrison being the full-time guy. And I think it's a tough needle to thread, though, because you got to get this guy ready to go, which comes in the form of game reps, but you also can't cost your defense. So the Bills got to figure that out on the fly. Obviously, you'd love to have those reps during camp and preseason to get him ready for this moment, but you got to have an accelerated curve here to get him on the field, and I hope it happens. Obviously, this is the last game that he has to miss, this coming game against the Saints, and then he can be taken off of injured reserve, and you could get that 21-day practice window for him to ramp up, and hopefully he gets out there pretty soon. I'm excited to see him. JK says, would it benefit Josh Allen in the offense to take a couple of deep shots, even if into coverage, just to figure out the disconnect with that part of the offense, or do we just stay the course and let that deep passing game develop naturally? Yeah, you should never, ever, 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 ever throw into coverage just to do it. I mean, that's not very sound. That's not very sound. Josh Allen was on Pat McAfee's show on Friday, and he was asked about this a little bit. And Josh said, quote, teams are playing soft zones against us, and there is some underneath stuff that we're going to keep taking until they take it away. That's what you do. You do the smart, right thing with the football. And the Bills are calling vertical plays. They are. But especially against Miami, these plays were capped. Josh was looking for them. They weren't there. You don't throw it if it's not available, ever. And there's this thought that, oh, you got to keep the defense honest. They are honest because they're playing to take that away without even having to do it. Teams are choosing their death against Josh Allen. And right now, they are choosing to die by paper cuts versus explosives. The Bills are willing to play smart football, pound the rock, take what's there in the passing game, take care of the football, and be a really tough team to beat. You don't do it just to do it. There's not a disconnect. Josh Allen, going back to that Week 17 game against the Jets, like this stretch of vertical passing has been highly efficient and highly effective. It's a great story to tell compared to what it was for the first 80% of last year. As teams continue to pick how they want to die, the Bills will do the right thing. I think that's what a smart football team does. Chuck says, listening to you talk about Curtis Samuel, my impression is that this year Bean seems to finally have realized that hoarding talent for the long haul is critical. He has put talented depth in place across the board, knowing how injuries have impacted us in the postseason. I think there is some truth to Bean having built-in reinforcements. We've seen him execute trade deadline deals, and they're fun and cool, and we like to add those players. But the reality is when you add a player in the middle of the season, it takes some time for them to get up to speed. You're also parting with draft capital to do it. We've seen the Bills the last couple of years add street free agents that played right in the middle of the year. Linval Joseph, Quentin Jefferson, Jordan Phillips. But if we're making this conversation about Curtis Samuel, I mean, this guy signed a 3-year, $24 million deal. You'd expect about 5 touches a game. Yeah, obviously, that's not a number 1 receiver, or number 2, or even a number 3, but that's a piece of your offense. Not a guy that can't get a jersey on game day and has been a healthy scratch. Yeah, it'll be nice to have him in case, if there's some injuries or something. Yeah, you'll be happy that you have Curtis Samuel. But that certainly wasn't the plan. I think there's something to be said for not forcing him on the field because of the contract, right? You're literally choosing to play Tyrell Shavers on a minimum deal over Curtis Samuel, who you're paying 3 years, $24 million. You're playing Elijah Moore, who's 1 year, $2.5 million, over the 3-year, $24 million guy. And I like that. If that's the most effective player for your team, play him. You don't have to be strapped to draft capital or contract investment. But I think Curtis Samuel is looking like a miscalculation more than, it's great to hoard some depth. I think you like to have as much depth as possible. And if you need it, you like to be able to tap into it for sure. But that certainly wasn't the intent of what the Bills had in mind when signing Curtis Samuel. Now we can look at it as a silver lining right now. If the Bills do have an injury at receiver, you'll be happy that you have Curtis Samuel. But for him to be a healthy scratch through 3 games is definitely a disappointment. You could simultaneously look back to last year and recognize some of the big plays that he made in big moments and be happy about that. But right now, you got a lot more questions than you do have answers on this guy. All right, coming up next, we're going to get into Joey Bosa's volume. Can he play this many snaps? What's normal for him? We'll get into that and a whole lot more. Folks, be sure to stick with me. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most about 5-hour energy shots is how portable they are. It's big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. I've been eyeing some of these new flavors, especially the new limited time cranberry lime flavor. it sounds like the perfect one to try next. And honestly, I just love how fast it kicks in, and it's sugar-free too, so I don't have to worry about crashing later on. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy Shots. Get the favorites you love, or be bold and try something new in-store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or on Amazon today. All right, folks, next one here comes from Jennifer, who says, I'm very impressed with Joey Bosa. I'm curious about how the Chargers used him, how many snaps he played, and if the Bills' rotational style of defense may have a positive effect in keeping him healthy all season long. It's a good question. So early in Joey Bosa's career, 2016 through 2021, he was a 70 to 80% of snaps player for the Chargers. Then the injuries started to pile up over the last few years. And so 2022 through 2024, he was on the field for about 50% of the snaps in the games he was healthy. So not 50% of the overall snaps. In the games that he played in, he was on the field for 50% of snaps. And so I think that's probably a lot more where the Bills want to be. I don't think you want to play him in this 70 to 80% type situation. The Chargers also played a very different style of defense. They were mostly a 3-4 defense. And so Joey Bosa was playing this rush outside linebacker role, stand-up 2-point position a lot of times. And now the Bills are an even front defense where he's playing in a 3-point stance in tighter alignments. So it's a very different type of role for Joey Bosa that I would argue is much more of a natural role for his body type and skill set. I mean, you're talking about a 6'5", 280-pound defensive end. Him playing tighter alignments with his hand in the dirt is a much cleaner utilization for his style of game as opposed to wider alignments as a stand-up outside linebacker. So far this season for the Bills, Joey's played 114 snaps in 3 games. That's 38 a game. That would put him at 646 for the season. It's a little high, right? I think so. I think you're looking for closer to 30 a game. That's what feels right to me. And so if he were to average 30 a game for the rest of the year, combined with the 114 he's already played, that put him at about 300 or 534 snaps, which feels right to me. I think around 500 snaps makes more sense than, right now he's on pace for like 650 snaps. I think Michael Hoyt helps with this. Once you get him back in this equation, that's a worthy player to get snaps as opposed to, Javon Solomon has been the 4th defensive end, and, he only played 9 snaps against Miami and has not looked effective. So I'm hopeful to see Landon Jackson this week and give him some opportunity over the next few games. And then, you get Hoyt back after the bye, and you can look at this. All right, what's our 4-man rotation, and how do those snaps distribute intelligently to get the most out of all of our players? So I think it's a little higher than you want it to be, particularly in that Miami game. But I think you should have some opportunities for that to stabilize and get Joey at the spot you want it to be to keep him healthy and then do the thing we need him to do, which is make those plays in the postseason. Jake says, on Thursday's post-game Bill squad, you touched a little bit on James Cook's volume. Coming into Thursday's game, he was 8th in the league with 34 attempts, and then he added another 19 against Miami. Right now, he's pacing over 300 carries on the year. If he stays on this pace, it will be the highest that he's had in an NFL season by over 60 carries. I know after 2023, we were concerned that he had too many attempts, and that number dropping in 2024 seemed to correlate with him being more effective down the stretch. Do you think the Bills are setting themselves up for a late season decline in Cook, other than we just paid this guy a lot of money and he's really good? Do you have any idea why we're seeing such increased production? Or is this all just smoke and mirrors because it's a small sample size? I think it's a good question. I think this is the right stuff to be talking about right now. You mentioned the carries. He's on pace for more carries in an NFL season by more than 60 ever in his career. I like to look at it in terms of touches. And right now, because that includes the receptions, and James Cook is currently on pace for 351 touches during the regular season. That's really high. Last year it was 239. 2023 it was 281. His rookie season it was 110. His last year in college was 140. 2020 in college, 61, 2019 in college, 47, 2018 in college, 49. So, yeah, we're talking about another huge jump in touches for him. I am concerned it is high. If you look at the backs last year in 2024 that had more than 320 touches, the names are Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Kyren Williams, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and Jonathan Taylor. Now, Kyren Williams, like 5'9", 205, but the rest of those guys are, rocked up dudes that are, 220, 230, 240, some of these guys. Really different body types than James Cook. That's the point. You're talking about guys that at the running back position touch the ball that much. They are not built like James Cook. Kyren Williams is somewhat of your saving grace, but 5'9", 205 is different than 5'11", 190, which is what James Cook is. So, yeah, I have a level of concern with this. I think the good news about this is that James Cook does well to not get tackled hard, right? He's not taking big hits. He does well to make it difficult for defenders to square him up, and he doesn't take big shots, which is helpful. And I'm sure, he's more prepared for this. You go back to that jump in 2023 where he had 281 touches in 2023, and his previous career high was 140. I think he's obviously been a little bit more accustomed to the workload, and that makes me optimistic, but I'd like to see James a lot closer to 300 touches, like 275 to 300, than right now pushing for north of 350. Obviously, he's a great player and you want him to touch the ball, but you want him to touch the ball and be, firing on all cylinders for the postseason run. Now, I think part of that right now is that you haven't gotten much from Ray Davis, which leads into the next question from Dave. Dave says, I was just listening to you guys talk about Ray Davis on Bill Squad. I don't think it's that difficult to understand, to be honest. He talked in the preseason about how much weight he has lost, and I think he's going into the season hoping to be different in his running style. He lost 10 to 15 pounds and expects to be utilized more like James Cook. That is not his style. Last year he was good in the passing game, but with the extra weight he had last year, he was able to run through some defenders. Consider this a herd mentality submission, but I'd like to know if losing the weight has changed what he can do on the field. It's a good point, Dave. It's not something I was thinking about when talking about that last week on Bill's Squad. He did lose weight, and there's no doubt. You've watched Ray Davis, like even in the preseason and so far in 3 regular season games, he just hasn't looked effective. And it's a small sample size. He's only got 10 touches to this point, but he doesn't look as good. And again, small sample size, but in those 10 touches, he's averaging 1.8 yards after contact per attempt. In 2024, it was 3.03 yards after contact per attempt. That's a pretty significant dip. Again, 10 touches. So we're mindful of that. But also, look at the games. He had 1 carry against the Ravens, had none against Miami. 9 of his 10 carries came against the Jets in a game that the Bills won by 20, right? You're just kind of giving him some carries to get out of that game. So he's not getting high leverage opportunities to touch the football. So I think that, we're thinking about James Cook and the uptick in volume. Well, part of that has to do with Ray Davis not really showing you that he's worthy of getting a lot of touches right now. And to Dave's point, I do wonder about the increased weight or decreased weight, and kind of taken away from him being that physical between the tackles runner that we enjoyed last year. And I don't think, obviously he proved to be able to catch the ball really well at that weight. And so I don't know, maybe his expectations were a little bit different for the role. I don't think guys lose 10 to 15 pounds rogue, right? Like, I think that's part of the conversations they would have with the coaching staff and say, hey, this is the role we envision. This is the weight and body composition that we'd like to see from you. And this is where they get. So I don't think it's like Ray Davis decided he would lose weight and become a different player. I'm sure that was part of the plan for him that was discussed with the coaching staff. But yeah, you'd like to be getting a little more out of Ray Davis right now. So you feel better about, not only James Cook's volume now, but what it looks like down the road. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully Ray Davis gets it going. It's early in the season, but you like to get a little more out of that spot, especially with how much the Bills are running the football. All right, we're going to talk a lot of defense here the rest of the way. And someone also asked me if it's time to talk about Josh Allen over Bruce Smith is the best ever Buffalo Bill. So we'll do all that here next. Folks, be sure to stick with us. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet, whether that's spreads, over-unders, player props, building same-game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Just makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keep an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to your game days. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, folks, welcome back. I've been telling you about our Discord channel. I hope that you get in on this because we're having a lot of fun, and this Wednesday night, it's going to be awesome. We do a herd hangout every single Wednesday. So I go live and I do kind of an exclusive stream for everyone in the Discord channel. And this week, Jerry Ostrowski will be joining me, and we're breaking down Deion Walker film. So you want to see that, be part of that, it's exclusive to our Discord community. So hop in, me, Jerry Ostrowski, and you breaking down this Deion Walker film. It will be fun. Don't miss it. We do stuff like this every single Wednesday night. So how do you get into our Discord channel? Well, it's available to people who have a Subtext or a Substack subscription. And you get more content through that. So check it all out. If you go to thejoemarino.com, you can see all the details and get signed up. There's a link in today's show notes, thejoemarino.com, or just go to your browser, type in thejoemarino.com and get in on the fun. And it's like, almost 2,000 Bills fans in there. We're talking Bills and NFL and, video games, all kinds of stuff all the time in the Discord. Don't miss out. Be part of it. And I can't wait to break down that film with Jerry O on Wednesday night. All right, next one here comes from Justin, who says, you hit some on the Bills D on the post-game podcast, but this third down defense is looking like last year's. Waddle and Hill are about as tough as it gets to cover, but that's where a D-line should have helped. The scheme the Bills want to run was heavily dependent on having Max at CB2 and Hoyt. Is it too early to be concerned because we are missing pieces? Where's Groot? And the thing I fear most with our defense is we never have had an elite pass rusher. Unfortunately, those aren't easy to come by. So I've been very intentional, or at least I've tried to be very intentional in communicating that we need to have a level of patience with this defense. There's a lot of new scheme elements. They're playing three linebackers way more than they ever have. They're blitzing more. They're playing more man coverage. They're missing Maxwell Hairston. They're missing Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi. They're playing these rookies on this defensive line that in some ways are not ready to go. You're still trying to get Cole Bishop fully repped. Groot is playing through a bone bruise in his knee. Joe Buscaglia disclosed that in an article that he wrote recently, said he's been dealing with that since the Ravens game. Dr. Kyle Trimble found a clip where he bumped knees with Derrick Henry, and you could see that he was in some discomfort afterwards. So obviously that's probably affecting him a little bit. You didn't have Ed Oliver against the last two games, right? I mean, so yeah, you got a lot of stuff here on top of some of the new elements that are taken away from your defense right now. So yeah, look, it's a concern. No, there's no doubt about it, right? You want this defense to be better, especially on third downs. But it's not important to me that the defense is hitting its stride in week 3. Let's see this thing incrementally improve and be where it needs to be as the season moves along. And then, of course, in the postseason. I think the defense against Miami was in great situations. They have to get off the field on third downs. That's simply it. They didn't give up much in the way of yards or points to Miami. The Bills got them into 15 third downs. That's great. You love that. Unfortunately, they converted 10 of them. That's way too many. So I think it's that simple. Those situational moments. They played overall, and I know it's hard to say they played good defense when they couldn't get off the field on third downs, but they were in good situations. Now they needed to take advantage of the good situations that they earned, right? And then, of course, through that, you reveal issues with your coverage. You reveal issues with your pass rush, but then zoom out, keep in mind the big picture, and I think you're going to see this defense incrementally improve as the season moves along. You get those reinforcements. You could become more comfortable schematically with what you're asking your guys to do. Your young players get more experience, and yeah, you should be playing a lot better football in week 5 and 9 and 11 and 14, and then playing your best football in the postseason, right? Tyler says, with a lack of pass rush against Miami, it seems the ineffectiveness of the D-line elevates as a concern. From what you've seen, is this issue rooted in lack of talent, scheme, or play calling? Is there reason to be optimistic with the development of rookies and reinforcements coming from injury and suspension? In the offseason, you discussed the effectiveness of stunts and twists in the past. Have you seen those games deployed this year, or is chemistry not there yet to run those? So, yeah, I don't want to rehash everything I just said. They're missing Oliver, of course, the last 2 weeks. Hoyt, Ogunjobi, Groot is playing through a bone bruise. You didn't have Ed Oliver the last 2 games. Versus Miami specifically, the marriage of the rushing coverage was poor. But specifically getting into the stunt rate, which is a good question. Right now, the Bills' stunt rate is 26% on passing downs. That's up from 20% where it was in 2023 and 2024. So you got a 6% boost. And I think that'll continue to go up, right, as there is more chemistry when you get Hoyt and Oliver. Hoyt and Oliver are like important pieces that you start to get excited about when you're thinking about running twists and stunts in games, right? That athleticism really matters a ton. And you're also not only not playing Hoyt and Oliver, but you're playing younger guys and Walker and Sanders and Logue and Solomon. And those guys are they're not fully up to speed to be able to run that type of stuff. So yeah, I want to see it play out a little bit. I'm optimistic, but you want to see it, right? And I think it all works together as you get players back, as you become more comfortable with what you're doing. Hopefully it takes off. Vin says, have you had a chance to watch the film through 3 weeks and see if Osiris Torrance has taken a step? Also watching Tua evade pressure and convert third downs really concerns me, thinking about what Pat Mahomes could still do to this defense in the playoffs. I think Osiris Torrance has played well. I love his technique in the run game. I think he's been okay in pass protection. I'm not really ready to make definitive statements if he's taken this big step or not. I'm encouraged with what it looks like, and I'll leave it there. I don't think he's ascended into this elite guard status, but he looks to me at least an above-average starter. But I want to see a little bit more. As far as Tua evading pressure and converting third downs, I think your plan for Tua is a lot different than Mahomes. You're going to rush Tua pretty normal. And if he breaks contain, there's not going to be a whole lot of secondary contain, where if you're playing Pat Mahomes, you're much more aware of his mobility and what he can do off script and with his legs, and you're going to have some schematic elements baked in to contain that a little bit more. So, of course, it's a concern. Like, it's going to be a concern until the Bills prove that it's not worthy of being a concern. But I don't know that the foundation for my concern would come from anything Tua did. Last one comes from Justin. Justin says, it's widely accepted that Bruce Smith is the greatest player in Bills history. How big or small is that gap between him and Josh Allen? Obviously, winning a Super Bowl would easily top that. I'm just curious about your thoughts on this. Honestly, winning a Super Bowl doesn't truly qualify this to me. I think there's so much more than just Josh Allen. As we know, Josh Allen's obviously been good enough to win a Super Bowl. So I don't put any of that on Josh Allen, really. Just like Bruce Smith, I don't think it's his fault that the Bills didn't win a Super Bowl, right? I'll say this. Josh Allen is the most prolific offensive threat the NFL has ever seen. Ever. Nobody scores touchdowns like Josh Allen. Ever. Bruce Smith might be the greatest pass rusher the NFL has ever seen. Maybe. Maybe he is. Close. There's an argument. Josh Allen is the most prolific offensive threat the NFL has ever seen. Maybe, just maybe, he is already the greatest player to ever put on a Buffalo Bills uniform. I'm excited to see the resume expand and celebrate Josh Allen really, really for the rest of time, right? That's never going to end. That's never going to end. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Looking forward to starting to get ready for this Saints matchup. Obviously, expectations will be high there, but we got to get ready for it. And we'll certainly spend a lot of time doing that here the rest of the week. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. Look forward to catching up with you again real soon.